Hey there! We are doing a video regarding the CES Letter by Jeremy Runnels. I always say, hope I got that name right. I should have found a way to make sure I pronounced Jeremy's name right. So, this is pretty famous among the awakened crowd. And I got a comment on one of my YouTube videos recently where I mentioned something to some guy, back and forth commentary. This guy's, I don't know, taking the LDS apologist side there. And he says to me, well, a letter to the CES director, the CES letter, he goes, well, it's been shown that that guy had deceptive intentions, so we can't look at any of that. That discredits that whole thing entirely. But he likes not farms, Fair Mormon. Oh, and I think I want to address that really quickly, because this is that's exactly the kind of thing that these LDS apologists use, but then they switch the tables, and they can't play with the same rules straight through on anything. So they're saying that if they can find some kind of character flaw with Jeremy, maybe his cousin's gay or something, or he got a parking ticket, whatever they want to find that they consider a flaw, or maybe he made a mistake on this, or showed he had an opinion, whatever it is, what they like to do, what Dan Peterson, Scott Gordon, and all the disciples of Hugh Nibley like to do, is they like to find some flaw and then say, well, we just can't, that just eliminates everything this person ever said. They tried to do that with Fawn Brody. That's what Nibley basically did. He tried to find something that he could talk smack about Fawn Brody and then say, well, okay, so we just throw all of her stuff out. Hey, you know what? Brigham Young, let's use him for a nice quote here. He said the devil will tell you 9 things that are true to get you to believe one thing that's false and lead you down to hell. Well, I say then let's listen to the devil, because if he's not right 90% of the time, that's a hell of a lot better than the brethren. So the point is, it doesn't matter who it comes from. We don't have to trust Jeremy. We don't have to trust Fair Mormon. What we have to do is look at the factual evidence. I mean, do you discount gravity because Sir Isaac Newton was a sorcerer and a Freemason and a Rosicrucian or something? I mean, I saw a book written by some really high-level Freemasons, like head of Grand Lodge of France and all that sort of a thing, and it was called, they had a chapter called him, sorcerer and all this sorts of stuff. And if you look at the stuff he wrote about, it was a lot more than science. He wrote about alchemy, magic, all kinds, religion. But the scientific community gets rid of all that, and they just put the this stuff that goes along with the theme that they want to carry. And so we don't have to trust somebody. What we have to do is see if they can back it up. And so what does Jeremy do here in the CES letter? He's asking questions mostly, and he's making some statements, and maybe he's wrong on some of them. Who knows? Let's look and see. I have no reason to think that this guy has deceptive intent from anything that I've read. He was deceived by the church, and he spent 2 years on a mission, and at some point he woke up and saw, there's some issues here. And a lot of these issues many of us are familiar with. And it actually seems to be that the guys working for Fair Mormon, the apologists, are the ones that look for character flaws or some little thing. They twist words. They are the men of many words that speak much flattery. What I see that Jeremy's done here is he's cited evidence for concerns that he has, and he's asked questions like, how can this be? How do you reconcile this garbage? So I'm just going to go through some of these, and a lot of these were kind of on the 50 Problems with the Mormon Church video. So I've covered some of this stuff, but there's some things here that I would emphasize that he's not showing. And, there's probably some things that he found that I didn't know, too. So documenting is what it's about. So what do we have here? Book of Mormon, First Vision, Book of Abraham, the translation of the Book of Mormon, what Joseph Smith did with other men's wives when he was already married. Kinderhook plates, not going to worry about that. So let's go. Priesthood restoration, retroactively to make it sound right. Okay, I'm going to cruise through here now. Here we go. First thing he spots is he's talking about looking at the Book of Mormon itself and saying, why do we have stuff in it that doesn't look like it was being translated from somebody, who wrote this stuff 2,000 years ago or something, okay? 1,000 years ago. It depends if you're talking about the Jaredites or the Nephites. But we've got things in here that seem to be indicating that King James interpreters of the Bible, people who translated the Bible and put their, their words in there in italics here to help out with the reading flow, just happened to flow right into the Book of Mormon. And we've got some of the worst stuff we got stuff that in the Joseph Smith translation, Joseph Smith says, no, this stuff's all screwed up by the Catholic Church, but we find the screwed up places, the screwed up stuff in the Book of Mormon on verses he corrected in the Bible later. So he's saying that the corrupted version got in the Book of Mormon. How does that happen, Joseph? How does that happen? How does stuff happen that, stuff out of Isaiah that was published after these guys left Jerusalem is in there? Yeah. How does it happen that you got so much that's copied word for word out of your 1769 Bible? How is it that you got grammatical errors and mistranslations that were in the King James? If you were getting this off your rock, your brown rock in the hat, somehow your brown rock was picking up on the frequency of the Bible that's in the kitchen, the living room or whatever you got there, all-purpose room. Yeah, it's beyond suspicious at that point. So he says anachronisms in the Book of Mormon. So here's some of the ones that Jeremy's pointing out here. Horses. Okay, does that prove anything? Well, they say there weren't any horses when Columbus, and then Cortez came along. We prove that? Maybe, maybe not. That's suspicious. Cattle, oxen, sheep, pigs, goats, elephants? Yeah, elephants. Elephants. Okay, so they're supposed to be extinct by a long time. So were the horses, but the elephants, no elephants here. Cattle, oxen. Okay, these are domestic animals. Do you think the so-called Lamanites would be chasing buffalo all over the prairie if they could, if they had cattle and oxen? They could have oxen tilling their fields, pulling the plows, and they had wheels, they had chariots. You figure they could plow a field instead of use the primitive methods that they might have been utilizing. Cattle, pigs. You can put those animals in a pen. You don't have to have your braves cruising all over the place on these hunts for the buffalo if you got it in your backyard, do you? They didn't have these animals. They were all imported. These are all European animals. So it's not just horses, Sheep, swine, sheep, Maybe these guys would be, wearing wool clothes instead of running around in loincloths or something. Wheat. They didn't have wheat here. That's a domesticated grain. Silk. That's like from the Orient. Silkworms. Maybe they had to import the mulberry trees. Who knows, Silk. That takes, you gotta have the silkworms, you gotta have these processes of getting the silk and processing all that. Did they really have that here? Are you kidding me? Steel. The steel factories that have disappeared. Seriously. Steel factories. Yeah, Nephi, he takes Laban's sword, chops his head off with it. He says the blade was made out of fine steel. Of course, we know that steel didn't exist in Jerusalem. At least that's what all the history books tell us. The process is getting to get the kind of heat necessary to create steel is a little bit beyond what we see anything going on at that period of time, especially in the Americas. And my favorite isn't even listed here. Honeybees. Okay, the Jaredites talk about bringing swarms of bees in their little submarine boats that couldn't possibly stay underwater because they obviously would have gone right to the top if they were airtight and tight like a dish, but instead they have this impossible story where they're cruising around under the water in ether, just completely nuts. Anyway, they got bees and livestock in there, and it's airtight, and the animals are, distributing their waste products all over the place. And things are tempest tossed. They're being smashed by huge waves, so there's like turds flying everywhere. If you really think about these stories, they're just completely and totally nuts. So it says they brought bees over here. Well, there weren't honeybees here. So when we look at bees, when we look at history, like in the United States, we have the European honeybee brought over. Well, the Spaniards brought some over, and then we've got like the Europeans bringing them over, like in the 1600s or so. And there's history of these things like migrating, you know. And as the colonists would move westward, the bees would be a little bit ahead of them. And the Indians, as they called them, or the Lamanites, or Native Americans, I mean, these people, they called them white man's flies. White man's, because they came with a white man. They had never seen honeybees before. They weren't here, people. So the European honeybee spread all over. Remember when the Brazilians pulled that real bright move and decided, let's Africanize these and try an experiment. Then they let them loose on the world, and they've been terrorizing the planet ever since, the, killer bees. So after a few years, they've made it into North America, from Brazil. They spread. They don't just disappear everywhere. But that's what happened with the honeybees that the Jaredites brought. That's just another mystery. Another thing that just disappeared. So these are all valid things. I don't see any malintent here or any deception that's being used. It's stuff that's in the Book of Mormon, and you got to say, bees, elephants, steel, sheep, goats, all this stuff that wasn't here. I mean, they wouldn't bother importing this stuff if it was already here. So these are highly legitimate. How many of these do you have to say, yeah, this kid that's running around, putting a rock in a hat and telling people where their lost chickens were and stuff like that, might have been making up some other stuff too. All right. Let's move along. I think I've hit on that a little bit with the anachronisms there. And I haven't even talked about linguistic anachronisms, so we could mention, I've done that in so many videos, but I don't see, he's probably got it here somewhere, but, the Jaredites speak in Greek a long time before Greek was ever spoken. Right. And then the whole doctrines of baptism. Hey, look at your topical guide in LDS.org. Look up baptism. First reference in the Gospel of Matthew. You don't find it in the Old Testament. Why? Well, it's because the Great Abominable Church took it out of about 30 or 40 books. That's why, right? I mean, they got the Law of Moses and all through the Old Testament, but they somehow have extracted baptism and the whole Jesus doctrine and all that stuff. Everything that you find in the Book of Moses and the Book of, Ether and Nephi and, all through the Book of Mormon. All that New Testament stuff that's not in the Old Testament, but it's in the Old Testament time period and everything Joseph Smith, came up with, because he's just restoring stuff that the Catholics took out of all those books. Of course, they actually do have some Dead Sea Scroll stuff, I think. They got some various older texts, and the Jews have got stuff, and none of it's got the baptism stuff, and maybe not, doesn't look like it's all doctored from anything I've ever heard. So, sorry, Joseph Smith. Hey, what about the doctrines of animals? We got the Old Testament. I mean, these Jews, they're a slaughterhouse. Their temples are about murdering animals. Yet in the Joseph Smith translation of Genesis, he's got something that mirrors the word of wisdom as far as, eat meat sparingly only if you're desperate. He says, he goes so far in there to say, the blood of every animal I will require at your hand. Yeah. How does that go with it? Just go ahead and slaughter some animals. I mean, it seems like it doesn't go along with the whole Yahweh, really gets off on watching animals, be massacred and then burned so he can feel good and forgive sin. So it doesn't make any sense at all. Okay. I had one other note that I was going to take a quick peek at here. I was going to throw in on this because I had myself a couple of notes, and I'm going to look at that real quickly right now. And another spot here. Oh, it was bees and Genesis. Okay, got them both. All right, so moving right along. Okay, Jeremy goes really light on this whole DNA thing, and I go pretty heavy on that in some of my videos because, not only does the DNA show that 199 out of 200, every 200 people tested apparently of these Native American tribes people shows that their lineage, through their DNA came from Siberia, not Israel. And pretty much none of them are showing Israel. So what has the church done in their response to this? Okay, so Jeremy notes that they changed, the 2006 version of the Book of Mormon stopped saying that these guys were, that the Lamanites were the primary ancestors of the American Indians, and now it just says they're among them. They just can't find them, but they know damn well they must be among them, right? Among who? So if we read the essay, it's a lot more revealing, and he doesn't get into that here, so I do get into that in some of the videos that I've done on the DNA thing. And basically it shows deliberate deception being practiced by the essay writers, which are approved by the First Presidency and the Council of the 12. What have they done? Well, they have said that the Nephites and Lehi's descendants weren't like the only people or even the main people that were in the Americas. Well, if you read the Book of Mormon, it pretty much does say that. And Jeffrey Holland really, emphasized in 1976 in an article he put in the Ensign, things that were, in the Book of Mormon. In the Jaredite record, basically says they came over, the land was freshly preserved. Noah's flood washed away everybody, even though it didn't. But it says it does. And then he says, that the continent separated then, so the waters rushed in to surround the land to make damn sure nobody got to the Americas unless God wanted them to. So everybody that came because he wanted them to. Because it's a land of promise. Yeah, so we also have the Lord saying in there, through his prophets, that he's protected this land so it doesn't come to the knowledge of other nations, because other nations would overrun the land. There wouldn't be room for inheritance for, the Lamanites, basically. Nephites and Lamanites. And he also says, so these things are saying that nobody's there. Plus the Jaredites were already there, and they wiped out everybody that existed in North America, supposedly. And the Nephites find them, so they must be in North America, right? They find their records and all that. And it says that the land would be preserved that they might possess it unto themselves. And that's right that's right there, with the that's in like 2nd Nephi. So, and I've got that in the DNA stuff there, in the DNA video. So they contradict that. They say it's not the case. Right there in the essay, when it flat says it in the scriptures. Not only that, but they hint that, they disappeared into this large existing population. And then they say, they show, there's other folks that say there could have been these people migrating over the Bering Strait area or whatever. Yeah, well, except for that was like, 15,000 years ago or something? 13,000, 15,000, for a period of time there. Right after an ice age, long before Adam was putting on his first fig leaf in Jackson County, Missouri, and walking to Davies County, Missouri. Thousands of years before that. Yeah, maybe 8,000, 9,000 years before that, they've got these people walking across, and then they're not wiped out by Noah's flood. So, Anyway, Genesis destroyed. Book of Moses, which confirms that, destroyed. Book of Mormon, where it confirms belief in the whole Noah's flood thing, destroyed. No credibility, completely destroyed. The story is phony. So we could be done right now. Go out and have a non-alcoholic beer and save your tithing money. But there's more. Okay, so there's this DNA thing. Jeremy just didn't really get into that, so actually I kind of did. Anachronisms, we just did some of that. Linguistic anachronisms. Hey, we even got Jacob saying brethren a Jew, Jacob chapter 7. Speaking a little French there before it existed. Archaeology! Where are the swords from these huge battles? Okay, so he makes some really good points. Is that like deceptive? Sorry, I don't see it. It's an honest question. They said that it happened at the Hill Cumorah. They got like a couple million Jaredites getting killed there. But no, we can't find anything. The Lamanites found their swords, recycled them into something else, buried them. Yeah, that's what happened. And then, yeah, right. Same thing with the Nephites. No archaeological evidence yet, you can find tons of it for much smaller incursions. Not only that, if we look in the book of Ether, it says God promises the brother of Jared that he would make them like the greatest nation on earth. And they're there for like, 1,600 years? The greatest nation on earth, 1,600 years there. Okay, the USA's been going on for, 250 years or something? So this is many times longer, but there's no trace of these guys. Nothing. Sure, makes all kinds of sense. I'm buying it. Where do I sign up? I'd like to donate my 10% plus my weekends. All right. Moving right along. And he makes some other points there. Yeah, you got civilizations, evidence of them 15,000 years ago. Well, since Adam wasn't out of the garden yet, what the hell are these people doing there? Furthermore, if we know that the Book of Moses says that Adam was the first flesh upon the earth, the first man also. So if there was no flesh upon the earth before Adam, and the Book of Mormon says there was no death in the world until Adam fell 6,000 years ago, that gets to be a problem if you got people hanging out 15,000 years ago. All right. Yeah, so BYU had some professor looking for like 17 years for Book of Mormon evidence, and then he comes out and says, it's all BS. It's hopeless. He never found a damn thing. What does he say? You can't set the Book of Mormon geography down anywhere because it is it's fictional, and it will never meet the requirements of the dirt archaeology. I should say, what is in the ground will never conform to what is in the book. Okay, so that's what their archaeologist said after 17 years. Maybe it was time to retire. He figured out that it was obviously phony. All right, so next he gets into this stuff here, showing that, ironically and amazingly, there's all kinds of names of locations and stuff near where Joseph Smith lived that are very similar to things in the Book of Mormon for locations, and there's very similar names and all sorts of coincidences that look super suspicious, but they don't prove that the Book of Mormon is phony. Okay? Stuff in it that came, some of that other stuff appears to prove it. When we catch Jesus lying, I would say that proves it. There's a Hill Cumorah. So he's got a nice section in here if you want to read it. So if you're into saying, you know what are the chances of this stuff? What are the odds? They don't favor Joseph Smith telling the truth, I can tell you that. They don't absolutely prove anything, but they look pretty suspicious. View of the Hebrews, has similar themes. And it just happened to be Oliver Cowdery's pastor who put that book out a few years prior. I mean, the coincidences get to the point where you go, okay, so I'm going to believe the Joseph Smith story, right? The completely false first vision story that God came to New York and, yeah, I'll believe that, and despite all this other stuff, right? And the late war, view of the Hebrews. Funny thing is, from the late war, one of the same verses that Jeremy puts in there. The late war is talking about something happening on the 4th of July. Something in the 4th day, the 7th month, and Joseph's got that in the Book of Mormon. 4th day and the 7th month. It's just a coincidence, right? I thought, that's the 4th of July, okay? Yeah, okay. So he's got some altered text here, where Joseph's got the Trinitarian God. Yeah, so God has changed his venue. He's the 3-in-1 dude in the Book of Mormon. And they got rid of some of it, and he's listing several, differences between, say, the 1830 and later versions of the Book of Mormon, where we got, Mary's the mother of God instead of she's Mary the son of God. But there's other stuff that's still in there, Now Zeezrom saith unto him, is the Son of God the very eternal Father? And Amulek said unto him, yea, he's the very eternal Father of heaven and earth. I was okay with that. He's just creating the world, But here with this in Mosiah, it says, and now Abinadi said unto them, I would that ye should understand that God himself shall come down among the children of men, and shall redeem his people. And because he dwelleth in the flesh, he shall be called the Son of God. Really? Yeah, well, there's other stuff saying that he's the Father and the Son. Not only that, like in Ether chapter 3, where he says, I'm Jesus Christ, I'm the Father and the Son, but he does that in the Bible. Now, I've done this in their videos, but he does it in the Bible. Joseph Smith translation. Was it Luke 10:23? Yeah. Is that it? Yeah. He says that it reveals that the Father is the Son and the Son is the Father. It's total Trinitarian doctrine. Complete BS. So he changed his... So Jeremy points that out. I've done that in other videos. So we've got that. Yeah, he went from the Trinity to God. He's separate from Jesus, but he's just a spirit. And the Holy Ghost, he's the Microsoft Cloud. He's the combined mind and will of God in Christ in the Lectures on Faith number 5. And then we got what's in section 130. God decided to get himself a body since Jesus had gotten ahead of him by being resurrected. And it didn't work out with the new, the new doctrine that he was putting in there, the new Swedenborg doctrine. Okay. Well, I'm going to have to do this in parts. I haven't seen any deception here. I don't know what that is, I mean, we're looking at evidence here, and stuff that I've brought up that Jeremy didn't even have in here, and, it's not looking good here for Joseph Smith's credibility. Then did it ever? The magic glasses. But no, he decides to use the magic rock instead because Moroni takes away the magic glasses. Everything that came out of the Book of Mormon disappeared. The sword of Laban, the breastplate, the magic glasses, the plates, they all just disappeared. Are they in the magic cave, treasure cave that Brigham and Oliver talk about? Who knows where they are. It's a very convoluted story. First vision, done stuff on that. Nothing going on in 1820s. Brother William says they started doing things in 1823, going to religious revivals. Completely discredits Joseph Smith. Family joins the Church of Presbyterians 1823 or 4, not 1820. This will end part 1 of this. How about that? Saw it on a Mormon Truth video. Thank you. Comment, subscribe.